Okay, we're recording. I just don't like the light on you.
Turn the light off?
Yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure yet. That's not bad. Oh, mine, oh, well. That's all right. Oh, yeah.
Close the bathroom door or
No, I'm looking for as much light as we can.
more light?
Yeah, that's all right. That's not bad. Okay, so we're recording, and let's take off from where we were yesterday. So you were in Missouri, and you're in the FBI.
Yes.
And so how long? Remember how long were you there? Just a year or two, or?
About a little under a year.
Uh-huh.
And I mentioned we got married back in Long Beach.
Right.
Drove back out.
Right.
And introduced my wife to the fertile Midwest and got her a little shook up about the amount of corn that grows out there.
What?
But she got used to it in a hurry and got a job at Higbee's department store.
Yep.
Modeling and selling hats.
Yeah, that's right. What kind of car did you drive? The old.
We drove the
Chevy?
old 3940 Buick, 4041 Buick.
Oh, okay.
Still driving that old
All right.
clunker.
And
There's no one else who needed it.
and when did you get that Chevy, the blue and white Chevy?
That was back in 1955.
Oh, okay. So.
We went from Kansas City, we went to Cleveland.
Right.
I was in the FBI there for maybe, what time? We were married in 51, so we was probably 52, 53 before we went to Cleveland.
Yeah.
We were in Cleveland for a couple of years.
Yep.
I was doing a variety of investigative stuff, mostly criminal. That's where Cabbage Head Thompson got it.
Yeah.
We got him coming into town at a roadblock, stopped him and arrested him and put him in the can.
And that was Cleveland, or?
That was Cleveland.
Okay. And he was a bank robber.
No, he was he was a theft of federal stolen property.
Yeah.
Theft of property. I forget exactly what it was. It was some expensive government property.
And you called him Cabbage Head Thompson. Why?
I don't remember. That was his nickname.
Yeah.
I guess he had a big fat head. I don't remember. And we'd had a number of other minor kinds of criminal cases, stolen cars,
Yeah. You're doing great. Keep going.
theft of government property, deserters,
Uh-huh.
no accounting frauds
Yeah.
because they had guys to do that. Developed informants, tried to dig into some of the prospects. I had one big case where we had a guy was convicted, and I don't know how serious it was. It was theft, but he was in a Cleveland or Ohio jail, and he escaped. And as a result of that, he was designated a fugitive due to unlawful flight to avoid prosecution,
Yeah.
and it became a federal offense. And I tracked him down mostly by doing investigative work in Cleveland with his friends, his old cronies. Found out that he was likely he was up at his uncle's farm and outside of Ontario somewhere. Got a hold of the Buffalo, New York office. They had contacts with the Canadian police, and they got the guy, caught him at the farm and brought him back. So it was one of those minor cases, but it was one I remember. It was fun.
Did you get is that your first citation from Hoover?
No, that didn't happen until it got to New York.
And you had 7 citations in
Yes,
all?
yes.
Yeah.
I think it was 7. We Hoover had trouble getting people to move to New York, so a number of us on occasion volunteered to move at our own expense. So Hoover grabbed at that, and we just got transferred back to New York. We didn't have much furniture because we were living in a semi-furnished apartment. We had started with bills and furniture, and we had that shipped back, drove back. Ricky was born out there in Cleveland.
Right.
And we drove back with the old Buick. He was loaded the back seat, and he was sitting in a car, a baby bed, looking up at the light, the overhead light, the whole time. We got back to Brooklyn. It took us about 14 hours, I guess. stopped at my mother's and lived there for a week or two, and then moved down to Atlantic Beach and lived with your mother's mother in her house for the summer. I guess this was probably in the late spring when we came back, and I commuted from there into New York. And in the meantime, due to the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company owned Stuyvesant Town on 14th Street and 2nd Avenue, and they gave those apartments to FBI agents. I gave us first choice, so we got a 2-bedroom apartment there.
You got first choice in Stuyvesant. Had it just opened?
Yes. No, it had been open for a number of years.
Yeah.
In fact, Eileen's sister, your mother's sister, Dorothy, was already there, living there with her husband Gerard and her son Gerard. And
keep going.
Yeah.
You okay? Hi. Mom went to go get tea.
Oh, tell her to come and see me when she's done.
Okay. You can put that footrest up if you want. No one can.
See
They
it?
can only see your head, so you know it doesn't matter what you're doing from the waist down.
So we got ensconced in Stuyvesant Town, and with Ricky.
Yeah.
And you became pregnant there, and
You're good.
had a little. We had a little problem. You were
Yeah.
threatening to get born earlier than you should, and
Right.
Dr. Hardot, who was a relative of the Horner Hardot clan,
Yep.
was the obstetrician, and whatever he did, he kept you pretty much full term almost.
Yep.
And you were born there, and that's where we stayed.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we were there. I would guess we were there 3 to 4 years, maybe more, like 3. During that time, I got heavily involved with the Communist Party and espionage, and we did a lot of number of investigations involving surveillance of suspects.
Yeah.
They'd come into town, we'd get a notice they might be coming, we'd follow them and follow them around and get to know their contacts and expand on those contacts. It was just like a spider's net.
Right. Right.
And some of them were just local Communist Party security people that went underground when the Smith Act, when some of the Communist Party leaders had been convicted, and they eventually combined to lead us into the Russian espionage.
Yeah.
And probably the most famous case, which one I've told you about, was Colonel Ivanovich Abel,
Right.
who came into New York, illegal alien. We had some information that he would be picking up messages in Central Park in a tree, and there would be a sign on a light pole with a cross with a chalk cross that there was a message there. And we sat on that light pole probably for 10 days before we found anybody. Finally, this guy shows up, goes into the tree, takes something out. We followed him, and we had several of us on him.
Yeah.
We followed him probably all day long until he finally moved to Brooklyn and moved into what apparently was his apartment. And we kept following the guy, and obviously he had a reputation as a colonel in the KGB and as a senior espionage guy.
Yeah.
And so we were expanding the network on him, worked on him very carefully. We did a illegal entry on his apartment, which we found out that he had, in addition to his residence, like an office unit, and we found a lot of spy tradecraft, which was bolts that had a hollow that were you couldn't open yourself. You had to open a certain way. Had flashlight batteries, wood pencils where they take the eraser off, and you have a place to put a message. And he had a reputation as a guitar lover, Spanish guitar, and he had a lot of recordings by I I forget his name now.
Yeah, the famous
Spanish guitarist.
Starts with an S, Segovia.
Segovia, something
Segovia,
like that.
Yeah.
And he had material, and he had a high-speed radio that could send messages to communist Russia,
Right.
and
And you were actually in his room.
we were actually in his room,
Yeah.
confirmed that he was the guy he was supposed to be,
Right.
by finding all this material.
Sure, sure.
And we kept following him, and this went on, maybe lasted about 2 or 3 months, and he started to get what we call goosey.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty tough to follow guys like this without getting caught. And we were very careful, and we were very good at it. You know, if the guy looked suspicious, we'd drop off because we knew where he lived. We'd
Right.
pick him up again the next morning. But finally got to be such that the Justice Department felt it was about time we arrested him, which we did. Probably the following day.
Did you have to arrest him because Gary Powers had already been caught, or for some reason I always thought you only captured him at that time because the pressure was to get Gary Powers.
No.
No.
The only reason we arrested him there was that the Justice Department were afraid that we were going to lose him.
Yeah.
He was going to disappear somewhere, and they'd be totally out of bounds, and
Yeah.
we'd have no further contacts. And they thought we had enough leads to his other contacts that, that we'd have enough we could keep doing.
Yeah.
So he was arrested, and he would say nothing, would admit nothing. We arrested him for illegal entry, not because we couldn't prove the espionage.
Yeah.
We didn't want to prove it in court because that would give away a lot of
Sure.
information.
Sure.
So he was arrested, handled by the Immigration and Naturalization Service, sent to a prison in Texas where he was regularly interviewed, and he just wouldn't talk. He was a
Right.
professional.
Sure.
And then this is where Gary Powers comes in.
Right.
Gary Powers, prior to that, had been flying U-2 planes over Russia, was shot down by one of their missiles, which up until then we didn't think it could reach this height, 60,000, 80,000 feet. And Powers was supposed to take a cyanide pill, and he chose not to do it. And he landed, took a paragraph. I guess he I don't know whether he had a parachute or whether he landed the plane. I forget what.
Yeah, I think it was a parachute.
Might have been a parachute. And he was imprisoned by Russia on trial, put in prison. And at some point in time, someone just offered to trade Colonel, what was his name? Abel for Gary Powers.
Yeah.
And Abel's lawyer at the time had been a guy by the name of Donovan.
No kidding.
Yeah, Donovan, I forget his first name. And he arranged this with the State Department, the CIA, whoever did it. And they were traded on that bridge over the Rhine
Checkpoint
in
Charlie.
Berlin. Yeah, Checkpoint Charlie.
Yeah.
And Donovan later came back and ran for senator in New York State and didn't make it, didn't get defeated. And I don't remember hearing another word from the guy since.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just going to move this light.
Sure.
Did you got a citation for that, right?
I got about 6 or 7 citations signed by Mr. Hoover,
Yeah.
and included what we call bonuses, or several $100s. Now, it wasn't a lot of money.
Yep.
But it was their way of giving a reward for work that was well done. We did a lot of things with the Communist Party headquarters in the United States in New York. Found out a lot of information. Did some illegal entry work there. Followed a lot of suspicious people. Developed the feeling for the underground. It was exciting and interesting, and you felt you were doing something important.
Yeah. I remember Mom saying that you'd get a call in the middle of the night and you'd get your gun out of the strong box and you'd be gone.
Yes, but that was in Cleveland.
Oh, that was Cleveland.
Criminal work.
Okay.
In New York, I was never on the criminal squad, and I was doing all espionage and security. And but I'd work at night. But we would be out there in khakis and T-shirts in the summertime, old clothes. So you'd obviously avoid detection. You didn't want to
Sure.
look like an FBI agent.
Sure.
We kept doing that, and at this point in time, I guess it's getting on 58, 59.
Terrence, Gene and Terrence are,
Gene,
Gene's born.
Gene, we bought a house out in Long Island,
Carl Place.
Carl Place. Gene had been born, then Terrence was born, and we began to accumulate a number of children, starting to be concerned about providing for their college. And as a result of a friend of mine who left the FBI earlier and joined IT&T,
Yeah.
one of the people he worked for changed jobs and went with Litton Industries, and he wanted to get somebody like my old friend to work for him in New York. And I interviewed him, and a fellow by the name of Schaffenberger, who later became an executive vice president of Litton Industries and then moved on to another big corporation. So I went to work in New York City in the downtown by the Pan American building, I guess the Pan Am headquarters, I guess, not Pan Am, the New York Port Authority headquarters, where my brother worked.
Yeah.
And worked there for probably 6 months, and I had an opportunity opened up to be the top human resources guy at a company over in New Jersey near Morristown.
EAI, right?
That was Airtron.
Oh, Airtron.
It's a division of Litton, and I went over there as a human resources guy, and my major objective was to keep the union out, because no company ever acquired by Litton had been unionized after they acquired it.
Yeah.
And the reputation of the senior VP he had this acquisition, who was in charge of it, not my immediate boss, but the group vice president, he had just defeated the union about a year prior, maybe 6 months prior, by about 1 or 2 votes, and he was very worried about that. And so that was my job, basically, was to develop good human resources policies,
Yeah.
get to know the people, make sure you knew what they take, make sure they were taken well care of,
Yeah.
use seniority system. We had multiple plants
Right.
in Linden, New Jersey, and up in Morris Plains.
And what was Airtron manufacturing?
They
This is
manufactured
surveillance,
no,
aircraft,
they
radar.
manufactured radar equipment.
Yeah.
Basically, it was what they call, and I can't even remember the name anymore.
Yeah.
It was the tubing used to take the microwave signal from the antenna into the receiver,
Oh.
and it was used in aircraft, X-band, L-band, a few
Yeah.
other bands,
Yeah.
depending on the size of the size of the tube. And it was a defense, obviously defense industry company, and did fairly well. But at this point in time, times were getting a little rough. So I decided after about, first thing I did is I defeated the union election campaign by about, this fellow Gray, who was the senior VP, wanted to know how much we were going to win by. And my boss was Bill Boyd. He was kicking me under the table not to say anything, but I was a little proud. And I said, we're going to win by 75%. And we ended up winning by 78%.
Oh, is that right?
So I was kind of a hero
Yeah.
to the senior VP.
Yeah.
And in fact, about 6 months later, there was a union attempt out on the West Coast with another division that this guy had in his group. And I went out there for about 3 months to run that election campaign. We won that one by like 90%.
No kidding.
Yeah. And
I remember you would bring us back from California those crash cars. Do you remember those crash
yes,
cars?
yeah,
The
yeah.
rubber band cars, and when they hit something, all the body parts would
Yes,
fly off.
yes, yeah, yeah.
And I also remember back in the FBI, you'd bring us home shotgun shells, empty casings,
Yeah,
for us to play with.
yeah, we used to go up once a year. We'd go up to Poughkeepsie, New York. We had a driving or a firing arms range up there,
Yeah.
and we'd shoot. You'd shoot all sorts of
stuff.
shotguns, machine guns, pistols.
Before we continue with your career,
Yeah.
so you've got 4 kids at home now.
Yes.
And did Mom ever fuss at you about leaving the FBI, or you just figured it was about time?
No, she never.
She was pretty good about it?
She was very good about
Yeah.
it. She, her, what I didn't tell you, I guess we moved from Carl Place down to, we bought a house in Atlantic Beach, which I fixed up.
Yeah.
Built an apartment in the basement, rented that.
I remember that.
Remember that one? And about that, and her sister was down there.
Yeah.
And her mother and father were still there, and they thought I had the greatest job in the world because the pay was good, security, prestige, that kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas poor Dorothy's husband, he was slaving with hard and hard at it, not making the kind of money that I was making.
Yeah.
And work was probably working a lot harder, a little differently anyway. But no, to answer your question, your mother never nagged me about worrying about colleges or providing for it.
Yeah.
She always said she's got I have trust in your ability, and I'm not worried about it.
Really?
So, and it was a risk. You know, I left a good job,
Yeah.
good potential, and I had 8 years service. You know.
Yeah.
You couldn't retire till you were 50, but I was about 31 or so because I went in when I was 23, and I was with a high-tech company, and something I knew nothing about actually,
Right.
and it turned out very well.
Yeah. And you liked this new work that you were doing?
I enjoyed it, yes, because it was the thing that I liked about it. It was more, the results were more directly connected to
your efforts.
my efforts, my achievements. Whereas with the FBI, it was sometimes individuals. There's more often, more
Teams.
likely a group.
Yeah.
And the opportunities for promotion had too many negatives connected with it. You had to move your whole family.
Yeah.
And every time you moved, they paid for everything, but they didn't pay for the new curtains or the new rugs and that sort of stuff.
Right.
So the guys that wanted to get ahead, if they only had 1 or 2 kids, it wasn't so much of a problem. They'd go to Washington for a year, work down there and train, and then they'd go out into the field as an assistant agent in charge. And if you were successful there, you got promoted to a bigger unit.
Yeah.
You had to move your family. So, and you were getting a little more money, but it wasn't a lot more money.
Yeah.
And it was prestigious, and it was achievement because, you know, you could work your way up to be director of the FBI maybe. You know?
Were you, did you ever feel like you were in danger? I mean, did you ever...
Physically in danger?
Physically in danger. Anyone ever shoot at you? Did you ever
No one ever, I never
pull
had to
your gun?
shoot. I never had to shoot my gun.
Draw your gun?
In anger or in defense of anybody.
Right.
And I can't remember, I can remember going out making arrests in the middle of the night. Well, I had to have my gun out.
Oh, who was the guy? I remember that. I remember the story about the you had to empty a floor of a hotel.
Yes.
And this guy was reaching for his pistol under his
under the pillow. Yeah, he was a fugitive.
Yeah.
But he was there with a girlfriend, so you know it was.
Yeah.
And but we got the key, and he was sound asleep. It was late.
You took your you took your shoes off and.
Oh yeah, took shoes off, opened the door very quietly, had the gun out, and there were 2 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the guy jumped up and tried to reach under, but by that time we had it.
Right.
And that happened a couple of times, that kind of thing. We would found a guy, he was working in a park, and he was handling the rowboats, and we finally located him, you know, through investigative means, without going into great detail. And we didn't know much about how dangerous he was. He picked up one of these big poles they used to pull a rowboat in the water, and I don't know whether he was going to do anything with it, but I stepped on the pole and knocked the guy over, and you know, we put the cuffs on him.
Yeah.
Didn't have any problem. A few of those things like that happen.
Right. So you've got 4 kids. And were you or Mom overwhelmed? I mean, you know, today people are overwhelmed